what we do is we investigate the future world of work, which sounds all exciting. What we're really trying to do is understand the forces that are shaping the world of work. What are some of the drivers of change in the world of work? And then we package that in presentations and workshops and programs for our clients. We do a lot of research. We call these strategic insights. So we have a blog address called newworldofwork.co.uk, and people can get lots of free resources there. We do a lot of research projects. We've worked with business schools, London Business School and Duke University in the United States. And we also have written a number of different books. So I've written a number of books. Probably my best-selling book is called Mind the Gap, and it talks about different generations, understanding people who are older and younger than yourself. The presentation is called the TIDES of Change. Now, TIDES is an acronym that stands for 5 different disruptive forces. So what we want to do in this presentation is understand that the world that we live in and the world we work in is very uncertain. It's complex, it's fast moving. And for us to be successful in this world, whether it's individuals or companies, we need to understand the forces that are changing the world. And we suggest, our research is showing, that there are 5 forces that we need to be looking at. And that's what it's about. So it's T for technology, I for institutional change. This has got to do with the structures of your business. D is for demographics, which has got to do with people, younger, older people, how we interact with them, people who are moving, migrating, and how we work together. The E is for the environment. Sustainability issues are important, of course, and when we look at the future. And then finally, the S is for social values. What people expect, what normal is also changing. And what we do in the presentation is we just highlight each of those forces, give some examples of the implications for business. And we leave people, to be honest, I actually leave people with more questions than answers, because it's about asking the right questions so that we can then look more effectively at the future. Obviously, the 5 forces that we look at could be applied in any area. They could be applied to any function or to any industry. But for the banking sector, each of these 5 forces is very, very important. For technology, it has to do with how we communicate internally and how we connect with our clients, and the battle, if you like, between IT needing security and everybody else needing openness. In the institutional change, banking is a great example, the financial sector, of deep structural changes with legislation and regulation and rules and so on. Demographics is important. Banking clients are not getting any younger, and the people that you deal with are of different ages, cultures and so on. Sustainability issues are also important. Customers and staff are all looking to banks to ask them, are you ethical, are you sustainable in what you do? And of course, shifting social values impact how people engage with banks. It's a difficult time for banks at the moment. They're seen maybe as people who are not contributing to society, and we need to be thinking through how we can adjust that perception. So there are many connections with the banking world, and we'll make some of those connections in the presentation. I think maybe there are 3 great questions that we could leave with people. The first is, how are we going to really use the best technology? When I started working nearly 20 years ago, companies had the best computers, companies had the best technology. I couldn't afford the type of technology that was available in the office, and I would come in early and leave late just so that I could use the office computers. Now it's exactly the opposite way around. People have better technology at home than they have at the office. If they had to choose their own phone, they would choose a much better phone than the company is prepared to give them. This is causing frustration. So the first question is, how do we really make the most of modern technology, make the most of the new technologies coming through? The second question, I think, has to do with emerging markets. I know a lot of people coming in on this presentation will be from developing countries. And the question is, how are those countries going to contribute to the success and strategy of the bank? And how can some of the strategies of the bank really help those emerging economies? And it shouldn't be seen as a us and them. It should be all of us together looking at this issue of emerging economies. That is being driven by demographics, and so we'll focus in on that. But that's a great question. And the final question, I think, is just from an individual perspective to almost ask, are you positive or negative about the future? Does the future scare you or does it excite you? For me personally, it does both. And I hope that's what people get out of the presentation. There are some threats coming in the future, but there's some magnificent opportunities as well, and I hope that's what people take away from the presentation. I think the issue is that maybe 10 years ago, when we were working in a company, we would expect the senior leaders of the company to understand all of the environment and the industry and come up with a strategy and then tell us what to do. But the world is too complex at the moment. It's too complex for us to wait for the senior leaders to come up with the best strategy. And the senior leaders don't want that either. They realize that they don't understand all of the complexities of the market, and they need to get people at the front line of the business to actually be taking some of those strategic steps themselves. So for me, the first step that any person in an organization should take is to recognize that the type of level of thinking that we need, the deep insights, is no longer something you leave for the directors of the company. It's something that each of us has to learn to do ourselves. And understanding the forces that are shaping the world of work is the very first step in doing that. It gives us a framework of understanding. It helps us to feel confident that we can manage the change that's coming. I think if people start with that as a first step, understand the future, become more confident about my ability to change, and then raise my thinking to think in more complex and systems ways, I think they'll be doing a lot of good work in developing their careers. Power is shifting in organizations, and so leaders can't lead anymore by control, command and control. They have to be more influential in their leadership. When we're dealing with clients and customers, the power relationship has changed, and when we're dealing with our colleagues as well. And again, yes, you're absolutely right. People need to recognize this power shift that's taken place and recognize that they are responsible for their own career, they're responsible for their own development, and to take that responsibility. Over the last few years, the banking industry has got a lot of help from governments around the world. I think the car industry has the same, but none of the other industries have. I think now if a major crisis happens, I think governments would be more likely to allow the bank to fail and let the market correct that situation. I think people would be a lot more skeptical of a sort of too big to fail type of concept in the future. And I think this is part of the point, is that the financial crisis has been more than just an economic crisis. Over the last 3 years, political issues have changed, social issues have changed, people's perceptions. So, for example, people's view of the banks has changed dramatically in the last 3 or 4 years. And I don't think enough industries, and especially I don't think enough banks, recognize how much has shifted, how much the mood has shifted, how much politics has shifted. And that is a big message that I like to get across to people. The last 3 years has not just been a financial crisis. There's been a lot of other things happening as well. And we're never going to go back to normal. The rules for success and failure have changed. You know, those banks and those companies that are going to be successful in the next few years are going to discover they're going to have to do things differently. The old way of doing things is not going to be good for the future. In the presentation, I quote the management guru Peter Drucker. And he says the greatest danger that you face during a time of turbulence is not actually the turbulence. It's trying to face tomorrow using yesterday's logic. And I think that's the danger that many companies and also individuals, I think there are many people in companies who are seeing tomorrow's world through yesterday's eyes, if you like. And we do need to make those adjustments and realize big changes are required. Correct. My company's name is TomorrowToday, and we talk about understanding tomorrow's world today, but we don't ever talk about yesterday. It's not that experience isn't important, it's just that the experiences we've had are experiences in a world that doesn't exist anymore. And that's a difficult thing, especially for people who are maybe 40 years old and older, because part of what has made them successful has been the things they've done in the past. But we're in a difficult time now because maybe all the things you did in the past are unnecessary in the future. And we have to be quite bold and quite brave to say that there are some things I can obviously take from the past and learn, but maybe the future is going to be very, very different. I think the best advice I can give to people is that they actually have to learn the skill of thinking like a futurist. I think it's a tremendous privilege to do what I do for a living, where I get paid and I get asked to think about the future and think about what's changing. But I think this is something that everybody can learn, and I think it's something that everybody can do. So very practically, I would suggest that people take 15 minutes out every week. It's not a lot of time, but you block it out, put the phone away, put the distractions away, and look at the 5 forces that I talk about: technology, institutional change, demographics, the environment, and social values. And on a piece of paper say, what have you learned in the last week in those 5 areas? What can you see changing in the world? And what impact does that have on your job? And if you do that once a week for the next 5 years, I think you'll be a lot more confident about understanding the future and being prepared to make changes to adapt to what's happening.